such a broad category of things, and you know, some people are doing more extended style fasting like what you're doing, where it's days on end. I also think it's interesting that a lot of cultures have fasting built in. I have a lot of people that celebrate Ramadan, and you know, it's interesting the fasting that goes on during that period of time. For those that are celebrating Ramadan, and again, a lot of different cultures and religions have periods of time when they're fasting. So it is something that we've done for a long period of time, just like ingrained in our culture. And I always find that that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Like we as a human species have done it for a while. Right.
And I think, you know, I always think the most popular form of fasting is intermittent fasting. Typically, again, I would say the typical pattern is like I never know if it's 8-16 or 16-8, like if you say one before the other.
I forget too.
But the typical pattern that I see people doing with intermittent fasting is typically, but not always, like skipping breakfast and eating like around noon. And then before 8 or whatever, they have an 8-hour window where they're eating. That tends to be the most popular fasting that I see people doing on a regular basis. But again, I think we could talk to you a lot about like what, and it might, I would say that it almost takes a level of experimentation to figure out what form of fasting is going to be right for you. I personally have done 16-8 before, where it was more of a skipping breakfast, eating at noon, and eating like a dinner at like 7 or whatever, and fasting the rest of the time. And I found that I needed to tweak that a little bit, like slightly, like eat a little bit earlier. So like you may need to adjust the timeline. And I think that that's just a really important point to start out with, that there's still a level of experimentation with fasting.
Makes a really good point. Again, like there's so many protocols, and I'm sure that there's like a million Instagram experts and YouTube videos and podcasts and who knows what else that say you have to do it a certain way. But it's like, you've got to figure out what works for you. And kind of, I'm going to give away a spoiler for later on in the conversation. Another one that I failed to mention was the fasting mimicking diet. I don't know if you're familiar with that as much, but like I tried fasting mimicking first, FMD, and I barely felt any difference doing it. I was like, oh, all right, like I could do it. It wasn't hard, but like I didn't feel different. And it supposedly has all of the same benefits as fasting. But for me, the difference between doing FMD, fasting mimicking diet, versus a true water and tea only fast is hugely different.
Yeah.
So like even just playing with it, like, yeah, we have data that, and I like the FMD. I think it's a great tool. I've done both the Prolon version and the FMD like DIY version, but like that wasn't something that made me feel profoundly better.
You could always just stick to the 3 meals a day. Maybe that's gonna work best for you. So I mean, I think it's all about doing some experimentation, feeling what works for you. I will say my only caveat to, and this comes up a lot in the SIBO space because of wanting to fast between meals to support the migrating motor complex. Yep. So wanting to help support motility and doing some fasting.
Yeah.
So I will say that in the SIBO space, I generally will try to get someone's calorie needs met before doing any fasting. Yes. That's my main...
I knew you were going to say this at some point, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for saying that, because I've had people ask me, oh, should I do fasting, or oh, should I do time-restricted eating? And it's like, well, if you've lost a bunch of weight and you're already on a restricted diet and you've been trying to heal, and like, if you're struggling to add foods back in, do that first, and then maybe like a year from now or 5 years from now, like maybe later on in your life, you can do fasting, but don't do fasting if you're already malnourished. Like, don't double down on the malnourishment.
Right. And I feel like it feeds into the whole mindset in the SIBO space of trying to starve the SIBO.
Yep.
It's very similar to that in my head. And I think the fear of not fasting is comparable to avoiding foods to prevent SIBO. And
I also tried to research, and I still have not come to a good conclusion on this. I tried to research if there's an appropriate time to do this within like the confines of the menstrual cycle. I don't know. I tried to research it a little bit. This was like 2 years ago, so now I forget. For whatever reason, a lot of the times I've done this, I've happened to land like the week after my period. So like mid follicular cycle for some reason. I don't know why, but that's like when I get the itch to do it. And like this weekend, I was like, oh, I'm overdue. I need to do a fast. I overindulged in junk food at my parents' house again. So this weekend, I told Mike, I was like, oh, FYI, I'm going to do another fast. I think I'm going to do it Tuesday through Thursday. And he's like, okay, cool. But yeah, for whatever reason, like when I kind of feel the craving to do the fasting, for whatever reason, for me, it seems to generally land like second week of my menstrual cycle. So I'm not on my period. I'm not ovulating. I'm not PMSing. I don't get PMS, but whatever. Like it's kind of that mid follicular phase where my body seems to want to do this. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't think it's better or worse or anything, but it is what it is. And I have one more point to share before this also flies out of my brain while it's on my radar. And then I think we might have talked about all the things I could think of with regards to fasting. So a friend of mine, a really good friend, has been doing the Dave Asprey Bulletproof fasting challenge. Like he's got a Facebook group or something. And she's been doing really well on it and feeling really great. And it's a combination of like time restricted eating and doing like the Bulletproof coffee and the brain octane and his sort of stuff. And the diet, it seems like a dairy-free version of keto. Like all of the fats are coming from like plant-based oils for the most part. So it's a variation of keto that I can kind of get behind. And she and her husband are doing it together. They've been reading Dave Asprey's book, and they've been getting a lot out of it. She lost a bunch of weight. Like her husband's nasty rash is gone. They feel like really good mental clarity wise. But what was interesting is the first time they did it, they just went right into it. And they were like, yeah, all fully keto, no carbs, no nothing. And then she got wicked PMS before her period. And she was like, what is going on? Like, I forget now what it was, but I think she was either like ultra bitchy and crabby at her poor husband, or I think it was like messing with her sleep. All sorts of things PMS wise were really off kilter for her. And then like they got to the point in Dave Asprey's book where he said, oh, I don't think women should always be doing intermittent fasting. Like you should probably eat more carbs and not do the IF thing around your period, and that way you're not freaking your hormones out too much, and that you could do the intermittent fasting and you could do the carbohydrate restriction, you know, basically like beyond that period of time, pun not intended. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, click the like button, and leave a comment down below with the videos that you would like to see me do next. Doing all of those really helps support the channel and support my efforts in making as many videos as possible for you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.